Hey guys, welcome back to our May 21st video lecture and our final video lecture for the year. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So, today we're talking about current President Donald Trump. So, populism comes to America. With President Obama's second term as president coming to an end, the divide between the two sides of the American political spectrum continued to increase drastically. This division only grew more tangible during the 2016 presidential election. After her victory in the Democratic primary election, the Democratic Party nominated Hillary Clinton as its presidential candidate in 2016. After a primary season where the Republican field briefly numbered as many as 17 candidates, Donald Trump would emerge as the Republican nominee for president. So, briefly, Hillary Clinton, as the Democratic presidential candidate in 2016, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama's former Secretary of State and wife of former President Bill Clinton, was attempting to become the first female president in the United States. Her policies were similar to those of Barack Obama. She supported ideas like maintaining the Affordable Care Act and working together as a nation to create racial and economic equality. Challenges abound for Clinton. All of this being said, all of the policy similarities between Clinton and Obama, she was dogged by the same type of scandal that her husband was. Where her husband was able to overcome this issue, she was not. Clinton faced challenges during her campaign. She often had difficulties expressing her vision for the nation and how her potential presidency would be different from President Obama's time in office. In addition, her campaign was challenged by an ongoing federal investigation that was being conducted regarding her use of a private email server instead of a government server to fulfill her duties as Secretary of State. This would lead to a lot of those campaign slogans of lock her up, lock her up, lock her up, so on and so forth. You can see that in a picture here. So the Donald and Old Hickory. Donald Trump is oftentimes compared to Andrew Jackson. There is a lot of similarities between the two. Both were populist in nature, and both had problems with those that they perceived as not American. Again, you talk about Andrew Jackson in the Indian Removal Act. Well, Donald Trump aims to stem immigration on all fronts across the country, especially from south of the border, right? Coming from Mexico and South America. Okay, so a lot of similarities between those two. Trump supported policies that place the interest of the United States ahead of international concerns or its relationship with other nations. Again, very similar to Andrew Jackson, our 7th president of the United States. Build the wall. I'm sure this is something we've all heard numerous times. This included a call to increase security along the country's southern border with Mexico by constructing a physical wall. Additionally, he wanted to replace the Affordable Care Act, vowing to repeal the law and substitute it with legislation that would offer quality health care at a lower cost. Again, something that's going to appeal to all Americans. So, the Twitter president. Trump used social media to connect with voters in a way that really had never before been seen. Barack Obama used it in 2008 and in 2012, but in 2016, President Trump took it to a whole new level. One expert stated that Donald Trump had used Twitter to his advantage by embracing the immediate moment, using unvarnished expression, taking risks. Other researchers who also studied social media in the election found that 62% of U.S. adults had relied on various social media platforms as a resource for news information. So now social media is going from a social sphere to a sphere of information gathering. People are actually using Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or what have you to gather facts. That's a slippery slope because simply anyone can post on those forums. Republicans embrace the narrative. This intersection of increased social media use and news gave rise to a new term, fake news. Fake news is defined as any type of news that is intentionally designed to mislead and can be verified as false information. Research that was conducted after the election found that the fake news articles about politics had a significant presence on some social media sites. During the election campaign, experts also saw a decline in the level of trust that some American voters had in the mainstream media. This was particularly true among Republican voters. Now, the map that you see on the right here shows freedom of the press worldwide. And you can see, the United States is certainly not perfect, right? Countries like Greenland, Iceland, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Germany, Denmark, those countries are considered to be fantastic media sources, right? Their bias levels are very, very low. It's considered to be a great situation for freedom of the press. The United States has a satisfactory situation. Okay, our news, certainly our news is biased, but to call news outlets downright fake, that's a bit exaggerative. If you were to look at countries, say like Russia or certainly China, many of the Middle Eastern countries, those news outlets are much, much more censored. Those would be much closer to fake than, say, the United States. Issues with candidate Trump. Trump was a controversial candidate, and still is to this day. He will be controversial come this November. Many who opposed him thought he was undignified and unsuitable to be president. Support for this perspective intensified in early October 2016 when the Washington Post released a 2005 interview that Trump participated in. An open or hot microphone had recorded him joking and making comments about the manner in which he claimed he could treat women. But that didn't seem to matter. A president without a mandate. Electoral controversy. So now, for the second time in my lifetime, a president would lose the popular vote but would win the election. Many people really have a hard time squaring that. Hillary Clinton would win the popular vote in 2016, but Donald Trump won more delegates in the Electoral College. In his inaugural address, President Trump spoke of the power that the American people held. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration, and this, the United States of America, is your country. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. Hard not to think about Andrew Jackson when you read that. Andrew Jackson threw one of the most epic parties in the history of the White House. The day he was elected, he literally threw open the doors and let his supporters come into the White House, right? What better expression of people taking back government is there than that? So, 2016, why so many Americans were frustrated? Well, Hillary Clinton would win the election in terms of the popular vote by 2.5 million. You look at 11 states in which President Trump won, that was won by less than that amount of votes, and those states added up to 191 electoral votes. It was a really, really significant amount of votes, even though he won so many of these states by small margins. Those small margins, when added together, added up to 191 electoral votes. It really was a stunning victory. So what 2016 means? In their analysis of the 2016 presidential election, some people theorize that Trump's win signaled a strong rejection of U.S. immigration and trade policies at the time, a growing resentment towards globalization, and an increased wariness with the concept of political correctness, or the need to refrain from using language that people might consider insensitive due to its references to politics, race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. Trump takes aim at the ACA. With legislative power in both the House and the Senate now firmly in their grasp, thanks to the 2016 election, congressional Republicans set out to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Conservatives wanted any new health care bill to make drastic cuts to Medicaid. Moderates opposed such deep cuts and reductions, fearing that many Americans would lose their health insurance. Some of these Americans had just gotten health insurance. Even President Trump called one potential piece of legislation mean and urged Republicans to compromise. In a quirk of fate, Senator John McCain, Obama's opponent in 2008, cast the deciding no vote during a repeal and replace effort in 2017. The Supreme Court goes conservative. We talked about how President Obama had put forth for becoming a justice, Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was not confirmed. President Trump, now being president, has had the ability to not nominate one, but two justices for the Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh are both now conservative justices on the Supreme Court. And our final slide for the year, dealing with a pandemic. Early in 2020, President Trump would be faced with perhaps his largest challenge to date, a global pandemic. The virus known as the coronavirus, or COVID-19, began in Wuhan, China in 2019. The first cases of the coronavirus are believed to have come to the United States in late January. Up to this date, over 80,000 Americans have died from the pandemic. It is more than likely going to be the primary talking point in the upcoming presidential election in November of 2020. So for those of you that have been with me this entire time, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your effort. I miss you all so much. I wish we could have had this time together. Not being able to spend this time with you, it makes me sad. And to my seniors, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. You guys mean the world to me. You really do. Again, thank you so much for your effort. And this has been U.S. History.